Hi, it's Mark here. We're going to start thinking in this presentation about one of the aspects of teaching that's really important, and that's professionalism. The teacher standards are 8 standards that all teachers have to adhere to, and they're the standards against which you'll be judged at the end of the course. We really don't like to look too deeply at those at the beginning of the course because it can have the effect of getting some people to just think about ticking off competencies against those standards rather than looking at their development as a whole teacher. We'll definitely be looking in depth at those as the course develops. Professionalism, though, although it's included in Teacher Standard 8, it's also got its own section called Personal and Professional Conduct. And to pass the course, you need to be competent in the teacher standards and meet the standard of professional and personal conduct. You might stop the video from time to time and jot down any questions or disagreements that you've got. I'd hope that treating pupils with dignity, with mutual respect, observing proper boundaries, showing tolerance of and respect for the rights of others, and of course having due regard to pupils' well-being would be fairly obvious and expected attributes of teachers. But we're also required to not undermine fundamental British values. We might disagree as to what these might be, but there is a helpful list in the standard. We mustn't undermine the rule of law. We mustn't undermine the fact that laws are made in Parliament and we must all stick to those laws even if we disagree with them, because we live in a democracy where all adults have a role in deciding how the laws are made through our representatives rather than the rules just being made up by the leader. And we mustn't undermine those values of mutual respect, individual liberty and tolerance. We need to be aware that whatever our personal beliefs are in terms of religion, politics, etc., we need to be careful not to overtly influence children. That's not to say that we can't state what our beliefs are about some things in the context of giving children balanced information. And we'll look more deeply at some of those ideas in RE and science sessions in particular. If we disagree with the policies of a school, there are places to discuss that, and it's not in front of children or parents and carers. And it's important that if we expect children to come to school and to come to school on time, that we model that same standard. And there are some statutory rules that we all have to stick to. We're expected and required to show commitment to the profession, and one of the ways that you can do that is by joining the Chartered College of Teaching and one or more of the teaching unions, and you can do that free whilst you're training, and I urge you to do so. We're required to offer a broad and balanced curriculum and to develop children's understanding of cultural diversity. We will be working on this later on in the year, as teaching is quite culturally undiverse, and some of the settings that you'll be working in are also quite culturally undiverse, so it's something we'll be looking at in much more detail as the year goes on. You might stop the video for a minute and jot down these websites that tell you where you can join the Chartered College and the different unions. The NEU, National Education Union, is the biggest of the two main unions working in primary. You will need to sign and agree to adhere by the SHU professionalism statement at the beginning of each of your placements. And I've attached this on the page for you to look at in advance, but we don't need to bother signing that now. Most of you will have had jobs and will realise that in pretty much every position you need to maintain a professional demeanour and at least display a little bit of positivity. Some people take professional to mean miserable. My first bit of advice for you is to stay away from the drains and sit by the radiators. In schools, like in all other workplaces, you have individuals who are drains, who kind of suck the life out of any conversation, are a little bit negative. Not too many of those around, but you do get them in staff rooms. And then you get radiators, people who radiate positivity, good ideas, enthusiasm. So at the beginning of your career, have a think about who the drains and who the radiators might be. And a good rule of thumb is stay away from the drains, sit by the radiators. Before the start of every year, there's always somebody that rings me up or emails me to ask what they should wear on day one. Some schools have dress codes and some schools don't, but it's really important to make a good impression on the first day. So what I'd say is on day one, wear sort of interview clothes, wear very professional clothes, and then spend a bit of time on that day having a look what everybody else is wearing and just copy that. Because if people are wearing, more formal clothing, or for men, kind of sometimes jackets and ties, that's not the most usual. But if the school that you're in, that's what they're wearing, then you should follow that kind of lead. Dress professionally and appropriately. One of the reasons being, apart from anything else, that parents and carers really notice what you're wearing. And if you're wearing something inappropriate, like a t-shirt with a big logo on, that is sometimes commented on. Schools can be funny places in terms of building relationships with other teachers and teaching assistants. So some advice I would give you here is to be proactive. If you want something, need something, or need to find something out, it really is important to ask. But teachers are really busy and they're used to people speaking up. So you might not get an answer straight away. You might have to ask 2 or even 3 times. But as long as you do that politely, that's fine. Teaching assistants have a lot of knowledge and experience, so treat them with the same respect as you would anybody else in school. You might need to meet teachers and school leaders through lunch times, or maybe at 8 o'clock in the morning, or after staff meetings, etc. And flexibly be available when they suggest, because it's in your interest. If you ask them to talk about behaviour or something like that, and they say let's do it at lunchtime or let's do it at 4 o'clock, if you really can do that, it's best to be flexible, because teachers have a myriad of other things to deal with, and then that might be the best time for them to fit you in. So try to be flexible. And there is a fine line between expressing an opinion and appearing to think you know it all. Remember, you don't know what you don't know, so do try not to appear overconfident. Schools don't have a lot of places where teachers can have more sort of private conversations, or conversations where they're just working out ideas. So just be a little bit aware that sometimes conversations in the staff room are a bit private, and it's a good idea to wait until you're invited to join in. And that might just be, through body language, etc. Try and be aware of the fact that sometimes if people are huddled in a corner talking about a particular topic, they might not want anybody else to join in. A couple of golden rules about using equipment in schools are: ask first, because it might not be appropriate for you to use it, and also always put it back where you got it from. Those are really important. There's nothing worse than going to look for something in a store cupboard or a cupboard that you expect to be there because you left it there and it having been disappeared. You'll communicate quite a lot with your learning mentor and other people in the school through email. It's important to remember that once you hit send, you can't get it back. So just double check that your email asks what you want it to ask and does so in the most appropriate way. It's really important on email to be polite. A couple of things about attendance. It is okay to be ill. In the new situation with COVID-19, there'll be stricter rules around coming into school if you have symptoms, etc. And we'll all be much clearer about that before you're asked to go into schools. The same actually applies if you're possibly suffering from any other infectious diseases such as meningitis, etc. And the rule is, if in doubt, don't. For the local professional development sessions, the ones that are held in Mac, you must let me know by 8:30 if you can't get there. For the Sheffield sessions, the sessions that shoe on a Friday, you must let the course administrator and me know that you're not going in. Although some of these I think will now be online or at least be staggered in times with the new situation. Just as with other workplaces, if you're ill for 7 consecutive days, including weekends, you must provide a fit note. So some of the training might be a little bit more online at the beginning of next year. We're not quite sure what the situation will be in September yet. We'll work it out as we go and find the best ways to make sure that everyone's included and able to make good progress from the beginning. If you'll be absent for interviews for teaching posts later on in the year, then you must make sure that you tell somebody that that's where you're going. Most schools expect teachers to be in between 8 and 8:30 because that gives a reasonable time to react to any issues, to talk to other staff, to finish preparation and to be ready for the day. Most schools have weekly staff meetings at an evening after school, and you do need to attend those staff meetings. Some schools are much more collaborative in their planning, etc. So you do need to understand that you won't be able to do all of your planning at home. You will sometimes have to work with other people after school on that. It's important though to find a balance based on your circumstances. So sometimes teachers come in earlier and do most of their preparation then. Sometimes teachers stay a bit later and do most of their preparation in school then. It's just about balancing that with your own lifestyle. One of the things that we say quite a lot on the course is life happens. And, sometimes things happen which mean that you might need to withdraw from the course or suspend your studies for a period of time. It's an important step and you should talk to your learning coach initially, the responsible member of the school senior leadership, and definitely talk to me in good time if there's something coming up that looks like you might have to suspend or withdraw your studies for a period of time. It's happened a few times, and every single time that it's happened, it's been to do with personal circumstances or illness, and we've managed to have a positive result at the end of it. So if there is a reason looming, then talk to us early. You mustn't withdraw yourself from a placement school without this discussion, because that's considered to be equivalent to withdrawing yourself from the course. If you've got a complaint about anything, and we've never had any complaints so far, hopefully, so that's good, but there is a sort of 3-part procedure. An informal approach with emphasis on local resolution, so talking it through. Then if that's not resolvable, then we have a formal procedure which involves mediation, and then there is an appeal. If you want to appeal against any decision taken by the Alliance, such as a placement on a cause for concern, you may lodge your appeal in writing with the Associate Teacher Liaison Officer, who will convene an appeals panel made from 3 members of the Alliance's wider governing body. So there's a process there. Continuing the idea that life happens, disclosure of pregnancy is at your discretion, but in the interest of health and safety, we do strongly advise you to make it known to the learning coach and to me if you're comfortable with doing that. Because then we can organise risk assessments and other appropriate steps to support you and the partner school. We've had one person become pregnant on the course in the past. She finished the course and now she's working as a teacher. So it's not a massive obstacle, but we have to work around it. So it is at your discretion. You don't have to tell us you're pregnant, but if you do, we can help you with it. You will receive quite a lot of feedback on how you're doing over the year. That's really important so that you know how you're doing and what you can specifically work on. And you'll receive that mostly from learning mentors, and usually after they've observed you doing some teaching. It should be constructive and it should give specific areas for improvement, but it can be sometimes difficult to hear if you feel that you've done better than the person observing you thinks you have. If it upsets you, talk to me. If you're upset by any feedback that you get and you don't think it was appropriate or you were surprised by it, then talk to me and we'll talk about it. If you disagree with the feedback, say so straight away and say why at the time, or say that you disagree and you need some time to gather your thoughts. Do not leave it and just hold it in yourself. You must say if you disagree with it, because it's only through talking about it that we can reach a resolution. As with dress codes, some schools have strict policies about mobiles. In general, in school, mobiles are switched off and away during the day. We don't want teachers walking down the corridor talking into their mobiles. In our sessions at Mac and at the shoe sessions, mobiles off and away. You'll probably all be on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And it's really important that if you're on those social media platforms, that you're really careful. Head teachers, children, and parents and carers will search for you. So do make sure that all your privacy settings are set to the most private. Sometimes that causes a bit of a problem with friends that you've got, because they find that they suddenly can't get to you or whatever. So consider using an anonymised name. So not Mr. Jones or Miss Smith, but think about an anonymised name where all your real life friends know who that is. And it kind of goes without saying not to engage with any children on Facebook or other social media sites. Another aspect of professionalism is time management, and it's something that people do find quite difficult. So in the mentor training that I'll be doing with your learning coach, we talk specifically about how they can help you with your time management. I've put this little kind of rule of thumb kind of document on because it is quite useful to look at and think, if you're struggling with your time management, about how you can structure your time management a little bit more effectively. So here are some examples about professionalism from the last few years. In this example, it did cause quite a bit of a stir and unease within the staff. What I was saying before about using equipment, that happened in one of the schools. However high up you've been in an organisation outside of schools are very, very specific and particular places. So having had a really strong career somewhere else doesn't mean to say that you know everything about teaching. So be really careful about that. And again, being a really good TA is a lot different from being a really good teacher. As a TA, you don't see everything that teachers do. So it's important to keep it in mind that there's a big difference between being a TA and being a teacher. This situation happened a couple of years ago, and she left everything right to the end before she expressed dissatisfaction with what she was being asked to do and the overall grading. If we'd have had the conversation much earlier, she'd have understood that what she was being asked to do was really appropriate. And because she hadn't talked to us about things during the year, she ended up having a lower grading than she otherwise might have done, and didn't really understand why. So lastly, resilience is really important. Teaching is the best job there is. There's nothing better than messing about, hanging about with children, messing about in the day, doing some learning, having a laugh, knowing that you're helping young people and children to develop and move on in their lives and make their lives better. But it is a pretty hard job. It's getting much better because a lot of the wasted time and the wasted things that we used to do that didn't really need to be doing have now sort of disappeared. But you still do need to be resilient. It's a big change for most of you coming into teaching because it is such a different world from what you've been in, unless you've worked in a school. So the learning coaches, your learning coaches, your mentors, and we're not mind readers, but we're on your side. Ask if you need help or if you're unhappy, and we'll always do our best to help you.